Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you a very common problem with refrigerator freezer combos, and that's ice in the bottom of your freezer. Oftentimes you'll end up with some water on the floor. It's not that big of a deal to fix, but getting to it can be quite a challenge. So let's get right to it. I probably need to get everything out of the fridge so I don't end up breaking it, because I usually have to move the fridge out to get underneath it and behind it. It's just labor intensive, which is why I put it off for this long. The problem is this ice. See how there's water right out here outside the fridge, and there's a layer of ice down here at the bottom. In fact, this rack is almost frozen into place, which is going to be a real pain in the butt. I got to get all this stuff out of here, or at least most of it, so that I can get to the areas that need the work. This is a great time to clean out the freezer too, from the food that accumulates on the shelves. All this stuff here at the bottom is frozen in place. So that ice buildup back there, it's like 2 inches thick at the back because that stuff stopped the water from coming forward, but all this is ice. So we have to figure out how to get this out of here because it's currently stuck in here. There. I just pulled on a little bit, broke the whole chunk loose. I may take something and try to break some of this ice up because it's got the whole thing wedged in here. Oh, there we go. The reason this isn't coming out right now is because there's a lip. This gets thinner right here, so I've got to chip some of that ice off so I can slide this rack out. This is not a fun job, but it's one of those jobs that you go for days on end with no problems, and then finally things like this build up, and then you have to put some maintenance time in. I'm going to take a large screwdriver and I'm just going to chip at the edge of this, and I'm not going to hit this very hard because I don't want to hit the plastic, but this ice is about 1 inch thick, so I'm going to just try to break some of these pieces off so that this can slide past that lip. Go. It's starting to come loose now. So it's handy to have some kind of a pan with sides on it so you can throw your ice chunks in it. One thing that's handy is to have an old towel to lay down in here to catch any water that might melt or run out of here. And we are going to unplug this in a second, but we just haven't pulled it forward to get to the plug yet. Looks like no one's been back here for a while. All right, now I need to take these panels off. This bottom panel just sits in the slot down there. And there's our coils. What happens is ice builds up on these coils, and then every so often it has a heater in there. It heats up so that it melts all the ice off of them and keeps them working efficiently. The ice that melts obviously turns into water, and that's supposed to run down, and that water is supposed to drain out through the back, down underneath the freezer, and accumulate in a plastic pan, and then it just evaporates over time. What happens is every so often a little bit of sediment gets clogged in that line. Then the water that defrosts has nowhere to go, so it starts to build up, and then anytime it goes through a defrost cycle, it can't get through that hole and it just runs out into the bottom of your freezer. So then you end up with this situation. As you can see, this is a piece of solid ice down here blocking the hole in the bottom there. It's ice all built up underneath here. If the water doesn't run out in a quick fashion, it's going to freeze because it's a freezer. I'm going to try to chip some of that out of there, but most likely what I'm going to have to do is just take a hairdryer and just melt most of that out of there. What you don't want to do is bend this all up so that it doesn't work like it's supposed to. You don't want to create a long-term problem for a temporary problem. Okay, so I have majority of the ice out of there. So I'm going to get a hairdryer and heat that up and try to work my way through the top part of this hole because there's ice down in it still. If I can warm the water up, it'll make its way through that hole eventually. I do not have a hairdryer that has kind of a narrow end on it. So I'm using this heat gun instead. I do have to be careful though because the heat is a lot more intense with the heat gun and we don't want to melt anything. So as I'm melting, I'm also going to take my screwdriver and just keep kind of prodding at that ice in that hole, seeing if I can get it to come loose and make its way out. So I'm getting a lot of water accumulating back in that drain area. So I'm going to take a cup and a turkey baster and just suck some of that water out of there, just to avoid having more water to mess with. Taking a drill bit and I'm just using it to kind of work on that ice. Got to be something kind of short, so I'm just using this drill bit to see if I can break through that ice. That ice in that hole is maybe an inch or two thick. It takes some time to work through it. Got to keep heating the water up that's on top and slowly it melts its way through. But we've already made it almost an inch, I would say. In fact, I think it's actually moving as I I just pushed through. So now we are through. The ice is not draining yet, or I should say the water is not draining yet. So it's still a big enough piece in the line that it's not allowing it all to drain. It is going down slowly though. There, it just all went through. All right, so we've got water slowly draining, but there's a couple ways to make sure that it's cleared out of that line that it goes down. There's lots of opinions on how you can check, but one of them is to put some air down through there. But if you push air through there, compressed air, there's a good chance it could blow some of the water out of your pan underneath and make a mess. But that is an option. Another way I've done it is to push a flexible wire down there and just make sure that I have good, several inches that I can push that wire down to make sure everything's cleared out. I'm going to use this zip tie. It's about a 12-inch zip tie. And I'm just going to push it down the hole and make sure that it goes down. That will tell me that I at least have clearance. Yep. And I got 12 inches of that zip tie down in there. So now I know I'm clear, or at least mostly clear. The line underneath might be longer than 12 inches, but I at least got 12 inches. So now I'm gonna take some water. In fact, some of that water I just sucked out, and I'm gonna pour it down there and see how it drains. So it is draining. I don't like how this is draining though, so I am going to go get a wire, a longer wire, and push down in there to make sure that obstruction is gone. It might just be some ice that's still stuck in the line, and it is far enough away from here that it's not going to cause a problem of refreezing. It'll eventually melt out, but I just want to make sure it's clear before I start putting this back together. So this is just a spool of electrical wire I'm going to use to push down in there. You want something very flexible because you don't want to poke a hole in the side of your tube. I believe it's rubber down there, so it isn't super strong. So you want something that can bend to make its way down there. In fact, that might be all the farther I can get it before it hits a hard angle. You don't want any ice left in here either, so we're gonna get this piece of ice out because it could refreeze and plug your hole. Okay, so it's still got some obstruction. Piece of ice or dirt might have worked its way into a wedge somewhere in the line, so that's okay because I wanted to show you the back of this anyway and show you how to deal with the other end of this. Okay, usually I have a panel on the back, something like this. It's about 4 to 6 screws. And all this could use cleaned up when you get it apart. You gotta be careful cleaning this because it's like insulation and you don't really want to rub it. So you just pat it a little bit, try to sweep some of the dust off of it. This just keeps your fridge running quiet because of the insulation. It absorbs some of the sound. And then we're just gonna sweep up the components in here because they're really dusty. Sometimes the best sweeper attachment is this little skinny thing. You can reach in there and get those hard to reach places. Okay, that's significantly cleaner than it was. Let me explain what is going on here. So this tube where it's draining is right here. So it comes down and it does a right angle right here, and it actually can't even hardly come off of there because of this mechanism right here. But basically that tube sits right there, and if this is plugged right here, it cannot drain down into this pan. So what we're gonna do is one screw holds it right there. We're gonna take that screw out, take this out, and just make sure we have good clearance all the way through. Make sure there's not a plug down in here, in this part right here. So your drain line might be different than this, but it's a similar concept. So we're just gonna loosen this screw up here. So now that we have that loose, this line should be able to come out carefully because there's a lot of stuff in the way. The worst part of this fridge is to get this drain pan out, I have to lift the whole fridge, block it up on wood about 6 inches off the floor, and then this is screwed to the bottom of the fridge just to get that out and clean that. So I don't know if I'm gonna be doing that today. If I wanna get that rinsed out real good, that's how I have to go about it. I may just take some paper towel and wipe that out, soak it up. This line is sticking up because you don't want to bust anything, but I got to get this line past it. There we go. See all that gunk coming out of there? Look at that. That's lint. I'm always amazed at how that gets back up this line to plug it up. That was it. If you ever have like a leak under your fridge, it could be because this boot here has gotten so loose that it just came unhooked, because mine is getting kind of getting brittle. Like it's not resilient like it used to be, I'm sure, when it was new, and it's not real tight on the bottom of that freezer connection. But before I put it back in, I'm going to get some paper towel and clean that nastiness out of there just so I start fresh. If you ever start noticing a nasty smell coming from underneath your fridge, it could be because your drain pan here has accumulated a bunch of nastiness and it just needs taken off and rinsed out really good, because it does sometimes accumulate water and debris and start to kind of get stinky. All right, I think I've avoided having to take that pan off by just cleaning it out good. So now we're going to put this line back up here where it goes. Kind of got to go in reverse order to sneak this by this line again. And then we want to hook it back up to the bottom of this. And it's, like I said, it's not tight like it should be, but it's gravity flow, so as long as it stays up there, it shouldn't leak. And then we just have to put this screw back in this clamp that holds this drain line in place. All right, one thing I'll mention too is the drain line isn't supposed to touch the bottom of the pan because it needs to let the liquid come out, and if it's sealed against the bottom, it won't allow it to drain. We're hooked back up and we're ready to put this back together. We've swept this out back here, so now it's all clean again. This area really gets neglected because who's pulling their fridge out? All right, we're gonna plug it back in because we're ready to push it back into place. One thing you might want to do when you're pushing it back is tape this power cord up so you don't roll over it, because you can't get your hands back there obviously to keep it out of the way. All right, we're gonna wipe all these shelf racks down while we're in here so it's nice and clean before we put stuff back in here. Kind of goes together like that. Ready to put the stuff back in. Well, that's gonna do it for this job, guys. Hope you got something out of this today. You can save yourself like $200 for a house call for this. This is just some labor. It's not really that hard. Just take your time if you're gonna try it, you know, so you don't break something, because you don't wanna cause yourself more problems than you started with. If you enjoy this type of content, guys, think about subscribing to the channel and give this video a like. It helps other people get to see it on YouTube. So till next time, guys, good luck with all your projects.